Rain lashed against the windows of the old Mercedes as Aurora Winters crossed the iron gates of Eaglecrest Manor. The driver, an elderly gentleman who hadn't uttered a single word during the entire journey from the airport, slowed down as he navigated the winding road that snaked between ancient cypress trees. The metallic creaking of the gate still echoed in Aurora's ears like an omen of what was to come. Her simple cotton dress, soaked from the brief run from the car to the entrance of the property, clung to her body like a second skin. Raindrops streamed down her face, mixing with tears she hadn't even realized she was shedding. In her hands, the crumpled envelope she had received just 3 days earlier, at the exact moment she was about to take her final vows at St. Clair's Convent in the mountains. Your father lied. Your life belongs to another. The words, written in an elegant and ancient handwriting, had pierced her heart like a sharp blade. The enigmatic signature, DS, danced in her mind like a persistent ghost. During the last 3 days, these 2 initials had become her obsession, her torment, her only certainty that everything she knew was, in fact, an elaborate lie. The car stopped in front of an imposing mansion that seemed to have been torn from one of the Gothic novels Aurora used to read secretly in the convent library. The building, a mixture of colonial architecture with modern elements, stood like a dark sentinel against the stormy sky. Tall, dark windows observed her arrival with the same intensity that Aurora recognized from her recurring dreams, those that had haunted her since childhood. At 22, Aurora carried the physical delicacy inherited from a mother she had never known and an inner strength that defied her apparent fragility. The years in the convent had shaped her posture, but they had not completely tamed the fire that had always burned within her. Her eyes, a deep and unsettling green, reflected an ancient wisdom that contrasted with her youth. The mansion door opened before she could reach the marble steps of the entrance. A middle-aged woman, dressed in an impeccable housekeeper's uniform, appeared with a black umbrella. "Miss Winters," the woman said in a voice that carried a tone of reverence mixed with something Aurora couldn't identify. Was it pity? "I'm Mrs. Harrison, the housekeeper. Mr. Stone awaits you in his office." Damien Stone. Finally, the initials gained a complete name, an identity. A shiver ran down Aurora's spine as she followed Mrs. Harrison through the corridors of the mansion. The interior was even more impressive than the facade, a mixture of classic luxury with an austerity that bordered on asceticism. Valuable works of art shared space with empty areas on the walls, as if someone had deliberately removed certain memories from the place. Aurora's steps echoed on the marble floor, each sound amplified by the sepulchral silence that dominated the house. There were no other employees in sight, although she could feel invisible gazes following her passage. The walls seemed to hold secrets, ancient stories that begged to be discovered. Mrs. Harrison stopped in front of a set of dark, wooden double doors so tall they almost touched the ceiling. Her hands, slightly trembling, adjusted the collar of her uniform before knocking 3 times. "Enter." The voice that answered from the other side of the door was deep, authoritative, charged with an energy that made Aurora's heart skip a beat. "Mrs." Harrison opened the door and gestured for Aurora to enter. The office was a spacious environment, dominated by bookshelves that went from floor to ceiling. A lit fireplace cast dancing shadows on the walls, and behind an imposing mahogany desk, there he was. Damien Stone rose when Aurora entered. Tall, with broad shoulders, and a presence that seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room, he was the embodiment of contained power. His black hair, slightly graying at the temples, framed a face carved in precise angles. But it was his eyes that captured Aurora's attention, eyes of such a dark blue they seemed almost black, carrying the weight of secrets and decisions that had shaped not only his life, but that of others. "Aurora," he said her name as if savoring. Say it as if he had already pronounced it thousands of times in his mind. "Welcome to Eaglecrest Manor." Aurora felt her legs tremble, but she remained firm. All the years of discipline in the convent served for this moment. "Why am I here?" An almost imperceptible smile curved Damien's lips. "Straight to the point, just like your mother." The mention of her mother made Aurora's heart race. "You knew my mother?" "Knew?" Damien rounded the desk, approaching her with the predatory grace of a feline. I loved her, and she betrayed me, just as your father betrayed me. And now, after 20 years, the circle closes. You are here because you're mine. You always have been. The words hit Aurora like a physical blow. Her mind was spinning with questions, with possibilities, with fears she didn't even know existed. Was the man before her a threat or her salvation, a protector or an executioner? I belong to no one, she replied, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. Damien stopped a few steps from her, his eyes studying every detail of her face, as if searching for something specific, something only he knew. That's what we'll see, little Aurora. That's what we'll see. The rain continued to lash the windows of the office, creating a background music for the silent duel that was established between them. Aurora knew, with a certainty that came from the deepest part of her soul, that her life had irrevocably changed the moment she crossed the gates of Eaglecrest Manor. What she didn't know yet was whether this change would be her salvation or her ruin. That night, lying in the bed of the room she had been assigned, a luxurious chamber that seemed more like a golden cage, Aurora watched the shadows dance on the ceiling. The envelope with the mysterious message was still in her hands, and Damien's words echoed in her mind like a somber mantra, "You are mine." But as sleep finally claimed her, it wasn't his words that haunted her, but his eyes, those eyes that seemed to know every secret of her soul, every sin not committed, every desire not confessed. And in her dreams, for the first time in a long time, the mansion with dark doors was no longer just a distant vision. It was her present, her future, her prison, or perhaps her liberation. The first rays of sunlight had barely penetrated the high, heavy curtains when Aurora awakened, her body still carrying the tension of the previous day. The room, which last night had seemed oppressive in its luxury, now revealed details that her tired eyes hadn't captured. The champagne-colored wallpaper with delicate floral motifs, the antique noble wood furniture that told silent stories of past generations, and a dressing table with an oval mirror that seemed to have been taken from a dark fairy tale. Aurora got up, her bare feet touching the Persian rug that covered part of the wooden floor. Her reflection in the dressing table mirror made her pause. There was something different in her eyes, a shadow that wasn't there before, as if a single night under the roof of Eaglecrest Manor had left an invisible mark on her soul. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Harrison entered, carrying a tray with breakfast and a cream envelope. "Good morning, Miss Winters. Mr. Stone asks that you join him for a walk through the gardens after breakfast. He left this for you." Mrs. Harrison placed the envelope next to the tray. Aurora waited for the housekeeper to leave before opening the envelope. Inside, there was a card with the same elegant handwriting as the message that had brought her here. Dress appropriately. The gardens of Eaglecrest Manor guard their own secrets. In the closet adjoining the room, Aurora found a selection of clothes that seemed to have been chosen especially for her, all in her exact size, in soft tones that complemented her fair skin. The discovery disturbed her. How did Damien know so much about her? How long had he planned her coming? She opted for a light peach-colored cotton dress, simple enough not to seem like she was trying to impress, but elegant enough not to appear to be defying the etiquette of the house. Her long brown hair, which in the convent always remained in a severe bun, now fell loose over her shoulders, a small rebellion against years of constraint. The garden of Eaglecrest Manor was a labyrinth of green and flowers, so well maintained that it seemed unreal in contrast to the somber atmosphere of the mansion. Damien was already waiting for her near an ancient fountain, dressed in a white shirt and dark pants that accentuated his imposing figure. When he saw her, his dark eyes gleamed with something that could be approval or possessiveness. Aurora still couldn't distinguish the nuances of that enigmatic man. "You look even more like her in the morning," Damien commented without preamble, his voice carrying a mixture of pain and fascination. "You continue to talk about my mother without telling me anything concrete about her," Aurora replied, maintaining a safe distance between them. Damien began to walk through the gardens, a silent invitation for her to follow. Catherine was extraordinary, not just for her beauty, which you clearly inherited, but for her soul. She had the gift of seeing beyond appearances, of discerning the truth even when it was buried beneath layers of lies. "How did she die?" Aurora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Damien stopped abruptly, his shoulders tense. "Some truths are like poison, Aurora. They need to be administered in small doses so as not to kill those who receive them." "I'm not a child who needs to be protected," she protested, her frustration growing. "No," he turned to face her, his eyes piercing her like blades. "You are much more dangerous than a child. You are a woman who carries Catherine's blood, her instincts, her strength, and also her capacity for destruction." Aurora felt her heart accelerate under the intensity of that gaze. "What exactly do you want from me?" First, he took a step in her direction, diminishing the space between them. "Stop calling me sir. I'm Damien to you. And second, I want nothing from you beyond what already belongs to me. Your loyalty, your presence, your truth." "My truth?" Aurora laughed without humor. "How can I offer my truth when all I receive are half-words and insinuations?" An enigmatic smile curved Damien's lips. "Patience, little Aurora. Each secret will be revealed in its due time. For now, be content to know that you are exactly where you should be." They continued walking through the gardens, and Aurora realized they were moving farther and farther away from the mansion. The air was loaded with the perfume of roses, and something else, a sweet and disturbing aroma that she couldn't identify. "This is your mother's private garden," Damien announced when they reached a more secluded area, surrounded by high walls, covered with ivy. In the center, a glass and iron greenhouse rose like an ancient jewel. "No one but me has entered here in the last 20 years. Aurora felt a shiver run down her spine when Damien opened the greenhouse door. The interior was an oasis of colors and aromas, with rare orchids and exotic plants that seemed to defy the laws of nature. "Your mother was a student of botany," Damien explained, his fingers delicately caressing a purple-petaled flower. "She believed that each plant held a secret, a unique power. This was her sanctuary, her laboratory, her refuge." Aurora observed his every movement, noticing how his expression softened when speaking of her mother, how his normally cold eyes gained a different sparkle. There was love there, but also something darker, deeper. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because," Damien approached again, his presence enveloping her like a protective shadow. "This place holds not only your mother's memories, but also the keys to understanding who you really are." Before Aurora could question the meaning of those words, a movement in the corner of her vision caught her attention. On an ancient work table, partially covered by dried leaves, was a dark, covered book. When she approached to examine it better, Damien intercepted her movement, his hand firmly gripping her wrist. "Not yet," he murmured, his touch sending waves of heat through Aurora's skin. "There are things in that diary that could destroy the image you have of yourself, of your past, and once certain truths are revealed, there's no going back." Aurora tried to free herself from his grip, but Damien held her firmly, their bodies dangerously close. "You can't keep me in ignorance forever." "No," he agreed, his eyes fixed on hers. "But I can protect you until you're ready to face the truth. Your mother made the mistake of wanting to know too much, too quickly. I won't allow you to make the same mistake." The distant sound of a bell announcing lunch broke the moment of tension between them. Damien released her wrist slowly, his fingers caressing her skin in a silent farewell that made Aurora shudder. As they walked back to the mansion, Aurora felt the weight of Damien's gaze on her back. Each step took her away from her mother's diary, but brought her closer to a destiny that seemed increasingly inevitable. His words echoed in her mind. "Once certain truths are revealed, there's no going back." That night, lying in her bed, Aurora couldn't sleep. The smell of the greenhouse flowers still lingered in her nostrils, mixing with Damien's masculine perfume that remained impregnated on her wrist, where he had touched her. Her thoughts were a chaotic dance of questions without answers, of unacknowledged desires of fears that took shape in the shadows of the room. And somewhere in the mansion, she knew, Damien was also awake, guarding secrets that could either save or destroy her. The question was, would she have enough courage to discover which? The first week at Eaglecrest Manor unfolded like a feverish dream for Aurora. Each day brought new discoveries, new mysteries, new moments of tension with Damien that left her simultaneously disturbed and fascinated. The mansion, which initially had seemed like a golden prison, now revealed itself as a labyrinth of secrets waiting to be unraveled. It was on a particularly quiet afternoon that Aurora found the first note. She was returning from another of her solitary walks in the gardens when she saw the white envelope sliding under her door. Her heart raced as her trembling hands carefully opened the folded paper. "He killed your mother." 4 words, simple, direct, devastating. The handwriting was different from the one that had brought her here, more urgent, less refined, as if it had been written in haste. Aurora felt the floor disappear beneath her feet, her legs weakening as she leaned against the nearest wall. Memories from the last week flooded her mind, the way Damien spoke of her mother, the pain in his eyes when mentioning the past, the possessive way he treated her. Could it be possible? Could the man who increasingly fascinated her be capable of such atrocity? Dinner that night was torture. Seated across from Damien at the main table, Aurora could barely touch her food. Each time their gazes crossed, she imagined those elegant hands stained with her mother's blood. Each enigmatic smile of his now seemed to hide a calculated cruelty. "You are particularly silent tonight," Damien commented, his casual tone carrying a note of concern that Aurora could no longer decipher whether it was genuine or simulated. "Just tired," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Liar," he murmured, putting his cutlery aside and leaning slightly in her direction. "Your eyes always reveal when you're lying, exactly like hers." The mention of her mother made Aurora's stomach turn. Why do you always compare everything I do with her?" "Because it's impossible not to see the similarities," Damien replied, his dark eyes fixed on her with a disturbing intensity. "The same inner strength, the same capacity to defy, to question. Even the way you try to hide your thoughts is identical." Aurora felt her breathing accelerate. The anger and fear that the note had provoked began to overflow. "And did she also try to escape from you? Did she also feel suffocated by your secrets?" Heavy silence fell over the dining room. Damien didn't move, but something in his eyes changed, a flash of something wild, dangerous. "Be careful, Aurora," he said, his voice low and controlled, but loaded with threat. "There are questions that, once asked, cannot be taken back. Like the question about who really killed my mother." The words came out before she could contain them. Damien rose abruptly, his chair scraping with a sharp sound against the marble floor. In 3 steps he was beside her, his hands grabbing the arms of the chair where Aurora was sitting, effectively imprisoning her. "Who has been filling your head with lies?" he growled, his face inches from hers. Aurora could feel the heat emanating from his body, his expensive cologne mixed with something more primitive, more masculine. She should be afraid, but all she felt was a dangerous excitement, an uncontrollable desire to provoke him even more. "Lies," she repeated, raising her chin in defiance. "How can I know what is a lie when all I receive from you are half-truths?" Damien's eyes descended to her lips for a fleeting moment, and Aurora felt her entire body respond to that look. "You have no idea of the dangerous game you're playing, little one." "Then explain it to me," she whispered, aware of how close their bodies were, of how the tension between them had transformed into something more visceral, more primitive. Instead of responding, Damien did something that would change everything. He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle or romantic kiss. It was a brutal, possessive kiss, loaded with anger and repressed desire. His hands left the arms of the chair to bury themselves in her hair, pulling her closer with an almost desperate urgency. Aurora should resist, should push him away, but her body had other ideas. Her hands grabbed his shirt, not to push him away, but to bring him even closer. She returned the kiss with the same intensity, letting out a low moan when his tongue invaded her mouth. "It was Damien who broke the kiss first, stepping back as if he had received a shock. His eyes, normally so controlled, were now wild, his pupils dilated with desire. Aurora remained seated, her lips swollen, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "This," he said, his voice hoarse, "should not have happened." "But it did," she replied, surprising them both with the firmness in her voice. Damien ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of nervousness that made him seem almost human. "You don't understand what's at stake here, Aurora. You don't understand what we are to each other." "Then make me understand." "I can't," he replied, and for the first time since she had arrived at Eagle Crest Manor, Damien seemed truly vulnerable. "Not yet. There are things that need to be revealed at the right moment, or they will destroy everything." Aurora stood up, her legs still trembling. "And, meanwhile, I should blindly trust the man who may have killed my mother. The man who just kissed me as if he wanted to possess me and destroy me at the same time?" "Yes," he replied simply, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her shudder. "Because despite everything you might think of me now, I am the only one who can keep you alive." Before she could question the meaning of those words, Damien turned and left the dining room, leaving her alone with the taste of him still on her lips and 1,000 new questions in her mind. That night, lying in her bed, Aurora repeatedly touched her lips, reliving every second of that forbidden kiss. The anonymous note was hidden under her pillow, a silent accusation that should have driven her away from Damien forever. But instead, she felt even more connected to him, trapped in a web of desire and danger from which she wasn't sure she wanted to escape. Outside her room, Eagle Crest Manor guarded its secrets in the darkness, while the rain began to fall again, as if the sky itself wept for a love that was born under the shadow of death. The days following the kiss were an exercise in torture for Aurora. Damien had become more distant, colder, although his eyes followed her with even greater intensity whenever they were in the same environment. The meals, once moments of veiled tension and enigmatic conversations, were now consumed in a heavy silence that only amplified the electricity between them. It was during one of these silent nights that Aurora discovered the diary. Unable to sleep, she had decided to explore the east wing of the mansion, an area that remained practically untouched, as Mrs. Harrison had let slip in one of their conversations. The moonlight entering through the high windows created ghostly shadows in the corridors, and the sound of her barefoot steps echoed softly against the ancient walls. A partially loose wallpaper caught her attention. Unlike the other rooms of the house, always impeccably maintained, that specific section showed clear signs of neglect. Her fingers touched the loose surface and, to her surprise, found a cavity behind it. Aurora's heart began to beat faster when her fingers touched something solid, a book. With trembling hands, she pulled out the leather-bound volume. On the cover, in golden letters already faded, was engraved a name that made her blood freeze: Catherine Winters, her mother's diary. Aurora barely managed to reach her room, her legs trembling with the discovery. Sitting on her bed, with only the light of the bedside lamp illuminating the yellowed pages, she began to read. Eagle Crest Manor, March 15th, 1999. Damien is different. Power has changed something in him, or perhaps it has only revealed what was always there, hidden beneath. The surface of charm and sophistication. James warned me about this, about how the Stone Empire was built on blood and secrets. But how could I not fall in love? Damien is like fire, dangerous, seductive, capable of warming or destroying. Her mother's words painted a complex picture of passion and fear, of a love triangle that threatened to destroy 3 lives. Catherine was divided between 2 men, Damien Stone, the heir to an empire built on obscure secrets, and James Winters, the man who was officially Aurora's father. April 20, 1999. I am pregnant. The timing couldn't be worse. James and Damien are in open war for control of the business, and now I carry a child that could be either of theirs. Damien suspects, I can see it in his eyes. He has always been possessive, but now there. Here's something more in his gaze, an obsession that frightens me. Aurora felt her world spin. The implications of those words were devastating. Could Damien be her father? The man who had kissed her with such passion, who had awakened in her such intense and forbidden feelings, could have the same blood that ran in her veins. Her hands were trembling so much that she could barely turn the pages. The following entries revealed a downward spiral of fear and paranoia. Catherine suspected she was being poisoned, spoke of compromising documents she had discovered, of a plan to escape with James's help. The last entry was only partially legible, as if it had been written in haste, June 3, 1999. If something happens to me, the truth is in the rest of the page had been torn out. Aurora closed the diary, her entire body trembling. Nausea rose in her throat as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in a terrible way. Damien's looks, his obsession with comparing her to Catherine, the forbidden kiss. A noise at the door made her jump. She quickly hid the diary under the mattress seconds before Damien entered the room without knocking. He seemed agitated, his eyes scanning the environment as if looking for something specific. "You were in the East Wing," he said. It wasn't a question. Aurora stood up, trying to control the trembling in her legs. "How?" "I can smell her perfume." "On you?" Damien approached, his eyes fixed on her with a predatory intensity. Catherine always used jasmine. The smell still remains in that part of the house, even after so long. "What happened to her?" Aurora asked, her voice barely passing for a whisper. "The truth, Damien, I deserve to know." He came closer until Aurora could feel the heat emanating from his body. His large hands framed her face, the touch surprisingly gentle in contrast to the violence she now knew he was capable of. "The truth?" he murmured, his thumbs caressing her cheekbones. "The truth is that your mother was the only person I have ever truly loved, and she chose James. She chose betrayal instead of loyalty, lies instead of love. And for that you killed her?" The words came out before Aurora could contain them. Damien's eyes darkened dangerously. Instead of answering, he kissed her again. Different from the first kiss, this time there was an unexpected softness in his touch, a vulnerability that made Aurora's heart ache. When he pulled away, his eyes were shining with what could be tears. "If I had killed Catherine, do you think I would have waited 20 years to bring you back to me?" "Then who?" Aurora began. But Damien silenced her with another kiss, this one more urgent, more desperate. "Ask no more questions tonight," he murmured against her lips. "There are things that once discovered cannot be forgotten, and I cannot lose you, too." Aurora knew she should push him away. The diary, hidden under her mattress, was proof that Damien could be her father, that each kiss exchanged between them could be an unforgivable sin. But her body betrayed her mind, her hands entwining in his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally separated, both breathless, Damien pressed his forehead against hers. "You need to trust me, Aurora, just a little longer. There are things in motion that you don't understand, forces that could destroy everything I've built, everything I intend to leave to you." "How can I trust when each of your answers generates more questions?" she asked, her voice choked. Damien stepped back, his eyes traveling over her face as if he wanted to memorize every detail. "Because, despite everything you might discover about me, one thing will always be true. Every decision I've made, every life I've taken, every secret I've kept, everything was to protect what is mine." With these enigmatic words, he left the room, leaving Aurora alone with the weight of partial revelations and the bittersweet taste of a love that could be her salvation or her complete destruction. That night, lying in her bed with her mother's diary pressed against her chest, Aurora cried. She cried for the mother she never knew, for the forbidden love growing in her heart, and for the terrible possibility that the man who made her feel more alive than ever could be the author of her greatest tragedy. The dawn brought with it a suffocating heat and an irrevocable decision in Aurora's heart. After a sleepless night, obsessively rereading the pages of her mother's diary, she knew she needed to act. Catherine's words, written with a mixture of love and despair, had planted seeds of doubt that grew like weeds in her mind. Mrs. Harrison noticed her restlessness during breakfast, served on the veranda due to the unusual heat. "The miss seems disturbed this morning," the housekeeper commented while serving more coffee. "Perhaps a trip into town will help clear your thoughts." Aurora raised her eyes from the untouched cup. "Can I leave the property?" An enigmatic smile curved Mrs. Harrison's lips. "Mr. Stone left specific instructions before departing for his meeting in New York. The miss has freedom to come and go as long as you notify security." The information that Damien was out of town made something awaken inside Aurora, a mixture of relief and disappointment that she preferred not to analyze too deeply. "When does he return?" "Tomorrow night," Mrs. Harrison replied, her eyes studying Aurora with an intensity reminiscent of her employer. Time enough for the miss to resolve what needs resolving. There was something in the housekeeper's tone that made Aurora suspect she knew more than she showed. But there was no time to investigate. This now. With Damien out of town, this was her chance to search for answers without his intimidating presence. 2 hours later, Aurora was sitting in a discreet clinic in the center of town. Dr. Marcus Reed, a renowned geneticist, received her in his office with an expression of genuine curiosity. "So, Miss Winters, you want to do a paternity test," he summarized after she explained her situation, omitting the darker details. "Do you have the genetic material of the supposed father?" Aurora removed from her purse a handkerchief she had collected from Damien's office the previous night, still with traces of blood from a small cut he had made while handling some papers. "I have this, and my blood." The doctor nodded professional. "I can have the results in 48 hours, but—" He hesitated, studying her over his glasses. "Are you sure you want to know? Some truths can change everything." "Ignorance is no longer an option," Aurora replied, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Leaving the clinic, Aurora felt as if she were walking on a tightrope over an abyss. In 2 days, she would know if the man who made her heart race with a simple look was her father. The nausea that had accompanied her since the discovery of the diary intensified. She decided to walk a bit before returning to Eagle Crest Manor. The streets of the historic center of town were busy, tourists and locals mixing under the relentless sun. It was when she passed a newsstand that something caught her attention, an old headline framed on the wall. "Stone Empire under investigation. Mysterious deaths raise suspicions." The newspaper was from 20 years ago, practically from the time of her mother's death. With her heart racing, Aurora bought a digitized copy of the archive. Sitting in a nearby cafe, she devoured the report. The article spoke of a series of suspicious deaths linked to the Stone family business, including that of a young researcher who had discovered irregularities in company records. Catherine's name wasn't directly cited, but the dates coincided. "More coffee, ma'am." The waitress's voice startled her. Aurora realized she had spent hours there, connecting dots, forming theories. The sun was already setting when she finally returned to Eagle Crest Manor. She was greeted by an unusual agitation. Servants were running from one side to the other, and an acrid smell of smoke hung in the air. There was a fire in the library, Mrs. Harrison informed as soon as she saw her, her normally composed face showing signs of concern. It started, out of nowhere, as if someone had deliberately provoked it, a male voice completed. Aurora turned to find Vincent, the head of security, his hard eyes fixed on her. "The miss has been out all day. Are you accusing me of something?" Aurora straightened her posture, facing his gaze. "Important documents were destroyed," he continued, ignoring her question. "Documents that Mr. Stone kept in a special safe." "Vincent," Mrs. Harrison intervened, her voice sharp. "Mr. Stone left explicit orders about how to treat Miss Aurora." "Mr. Stone isn't here," he replied, a humorless smile curving his lips. "And maybe it's time to question some of his recent decisions." Aurora felt a chill run down her spine. There was something predatory in Vincent's look, something that went beyond simple suspicion. Before she could respond, her cell phone vibrated with a message. It was from Dr. Reed. "Early results urgent. Can you come to the clinic first thing tomorrow?" With trembling fingers, she replied, confirming. When she raised her eyes, Vincent had disappeared, but Mrs. Harrison remained, her eyes full of a maternal concern that Aurora had never seen before. "Be careful, girl," the housekeeper murmured, approaching so that only Aurora could hear. "There are snakes in this garden that only wait for the right moment to strike." That night, locked in her room, Aurora obsessively reread the last pages of her mother's diary. One phrase in particular jumped out at her. The Stone Empire was built on blood and secrets. The smell of smoke still hung in the air, mixing with the jasmine perfume that came from the East Wing. Somewhere in the mansion, documents that could reveal the truth about her past had been reduced to ashes. And tomorrow she would know if the man who populated her most intimate dreams was actually her father. Aurora closed the diary and walked to the window. The full moon bathed the gardens of Eaglecrest Manor in a silver light, transforming the shadows into silent dancers. In less than 24 hours, Damien would be back. And with him, Aurora knew, would come more secrets, more lies, more stolen kisses that made her body burn with desire and her conscience scream with guilt. The question was, would she be ready to face the truth, whatever it might be? Morning arrived with a dense fog that covered the gardens of Eaglecrest Manor like a ghostly mantle. Aurora had barely slept, her body and mind in a state of constant alert since the fire in the library. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made her hold her breath. The employees seemed different after Vincent's accusations, their gazes loaded with suspicion and something else. Fear? She dressed quickly, opting for a simple outfit that wouldn't draw attention. The envelope with the results of the paternity test awaited her at Dr. Reed's clinic, a ticking time bomb that could destroy everything she was beginning to feel for Damien. But before she could leave, an urgent knock on her door startled her. It was Mrs. Harrison, her normally composed face marked by a frightening paleness. "Miss Aurora, you need to see this." The housekeeper led her to the kitchen where other employees were gathered around the old television. On the screen, a reporter was speaking in front of what appeared to be a hospital. Businessman Damien Stone was rushed to the hospital in the early morning after falling ill during a meeting in New York. Sources linked to the hospital report that there are suspicions of poisoning. The world seemed to spin beneath Aurora's feet. The words from her mother's diary echoed in her mind. "I suspect I am being poisoned." "We need to go to him," Aurora declared, her voice firmer than she felt. "Mr. Stone left specific instructions," Mrs. Harrison replied, pulling her to a more reserved corner of the kitchen. "The miss must not leave Eaglecrest Manor until he returns." "But here's more at stake than you imagine," the housekeeper whispered, her eyes checking if anyone could hear them. "The Stone Empire is vulnerable now. There are people waiting for a chance to take control, and you are both an asset and a target." Aurora studied the older woman's face, realizing for the first time the lines of concern that went beyond simple loyalty to an employer. "You know more than you're telling me, don't you?" A sad smile curved Mrs. Harrison's lips. "I served your mother before serving Damien. Catherine was special. She also wanted to change things, do what was right, and see what happened to her. Before Aurora could press for more information, Vincent entered the kitchen. His hard gaze swept the environment before fixing on her. "Already heard the news, miss? How convenient that this happens just when important documents are destroyed in a mysterious fire. Are you accusing me of trying to kill Damien?" Aurora took a step in his direction, anger overcoming fear. "After he was poisoned in New York, where I certainly wasn't." "Perhaps you have accomplices," Vincent suggested, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "After all, history has an interesting way of repeating itself, doesn't it? Your mother was also involved in a conspiracy against the Stones before her tragic accident." Aurora felt her blood freeze in her veins. There was a veiled threat in Vincent's words, a dark knowledge that went beyond simple speculation. Before she could respond, her cell phone vibrated, a message from Dr. Reed. "Results ready, urgent. Situation more complex than it seems. The paternity test. For a moment, Aurora had completely forgotten about it, consumed by concern for Damien. The irony of the situation didn't escape her. She was devastated by the possibility of losing a man who could be her father, a man she had kissed with a passion that had nothing paternal about it. "I need to go out," she declared, ignoring Mrs. Harrison's warning look. Mr. Stone's orders were clear. Vincent blocked her path. "No one enters or leaves Eagle Crest Manor until his return." "Since when do you care about his orders?" Aurora retorted, her voice loaded with challenge. "Wasn't it you who questioned his decisions yesterday?" A muscle pulsed in Vincent's jaw. For a moment, Aurora thought he might strike her, but then Mrs. Harrison intervened, placing herself between them. "I'll accompany her," the housekeeper declared. "Mr. Stone has trusted my judgment for more than 20 years. If something happens to Miss Aurora under my supervision, you can hold me personally responsible." Vincent hesitated, his dark eyes studying the two women. Finally, he stepped aside. "Don't delay, and remember, there are eyes all over town." The journey to the clinic was made in a tense silence. Aurora could feel the weight of Mrs. Harrison's gaze in the rearview mirror, as if the housekeeper wanted to say something, but couldn't. Find the right words. Dr. Reed received them with a grave expression that made Aurora's stomach sink. "Miss Winters, please sit down." "Just tell me," Aurora implored, remaining standing, "is Damien my father?" The doctor adjusted his glasses, a nervous gesture that made Aurora want to scream. "The situation is peculiar. Mr. Stone's DNA has markers that indicate a family relationship with you, but not paternal. He is your uncle." Aurora felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. "My uncle?" "Yes, which means your father was his brother. There are records of a James Stone who legally changed his name to Winters about 25 years ago, officially cutting ties with the family. I presume this is your father." The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in a disturbing way. Her father wasn't just Damien's business rival, he was his brother. The man her mother had chosen wasn't a stranger, but Damien's own flesh and blood. "There's more," Dr. Reed continued, his voice low. "I found traces of a specific compound in Mr. Stone's blood. It's a rare poison extracted from a plant known as black belladonna. The symptoms include memory lapses and bouts of violence," Aurora completed, remembering the notes in her mother's diary. "The same poison that was used on her." Mrs. Harrison let out a muffled exclamation. When Aurora turned to face her, she saw tears in the housekeeper's eyes. "Your mother discovered who was poisoning Damien at that time," Mrs. Harrison revealed, her voice trembling. "That's why she—" A noise in the reception interrupted her confession. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor, and before either could react, Vincent appeared in the door of the office, a gun pointed directly at Aurora's chest. "Enough revelations for today," he said, his cold smile freezing the blood in Aurora's veins. "I think it's time for you to join your mother, Miss Winters. Or should I say, Miss Stone?" Time seemed to freeze in Dr. Reed's office. Aurora stared at the gun pointed at her chest, her mind rapidly processing the latest revelations. Damien was her uncle. Vincent was the traitor. And now history threatened to repeat itself in a tragic way. "So it was you," Aurora said, her voice surprisingly steady. "You poisoned my mother, and now you're doing the same to Damien." Vincent's smile widened, transforming his face into a mask of cruelty. "Your mother was too smart for her own good, just like you. But unlike her, you won't have the chance to warn Damien." "Why?" Aurora stepped forward, ignoring Vincent's threatening gesture with the gun. "What's your goal in destroying the Stone family?" "Destroy?" Vincent laughed, a cold sound that made Mrs. Harrison shudder. "Darling, I'm saving the Empire. Damien became weak after your mother died, started questioning the old methods, wanting to clean up the family name. As if an empire could be built on virtues." Dr. Reed tried to move discreetly toward the phone, but Vincent stopped him with a look. "Don't even think about it, Doctor. I don't want to have to increase the number of accidents today." "It was you who set the fire in the library, Mrs. Harrison accused, her voice trembling with anger, "to destroy the evidence that Catherine had discovered." Evidence she hid so well that it took me 20 years to find, Vincent confirmed. But your little daughter here started asking too many questions, poking into places that should remain untouched, just like her mother. Aurora felt something awaken inside her, a strength that came from generations of women who refused to bow before fear. My mother may not have managed to expose you, but I will. You don't understand, do you? Vincent took a step in her direction. There's nowhere to run. Eagle Crest Manor is surrounded by my men. Damien is dying in a hospital in New York, and you're just another loose end to be tied up. It was then that Aurora saw in the reflection of the window behind Vincent a movement at the office door. Her heart almost stopped when she recognized the familiar silhouette. Are you sure about that, Vincent? Damien's voice, hoarse and loaded with controlled fury, made the security chief spin around abruptly. It was all the time Aurora needed. In a quick movement, she grabbed the paperweight on Dr. Reed's desk and hurled it at Vincent's armed hand. The gun fired, the bullet lodging in the wall as Damien advanced. The fight that followed was brutal and quick. Even weakened by poison, Damien fought with the ferocity of a man who had nothing to lose. Vincent was younger, stronger, but he didn't have the desperate motivation of his opponent. You should be dead, Vincent growled between blows. I learned from Catherine to recognize the signs of poisoning, Damien replied, his voice loaded with an ancient anger. And I've been building immunity to Black Belladonna for the last 20 years, waiting for the day when the traitor would reveal himself. Aurora watched the fight with her heart in her throat. Damien seemed different. Wilder, more dangerous, but also more alive than she had ever seen him. When Vincent pulled a second gun from his ankle, she didn't think twice before throwing herself at him. The impact brought them to the floor. The gun fired again, the deafening sound filling the small office. Aurora felt a sharp pain in her arm, but the adrenaline prevented her from fully registering the wound. Aurora! Damien's cry carried an agony she had never heard in his voice. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Damien, with a strength that seemed to come from hell itself, grabbed Vincent by the throat. The security chief struggled, his eyes widening in panic as he realized his 20-year plan was crumbling. You took Catherine from me, Damien growled, his eyes fixed on the man who had betrayed his trust. You won't take Aurora too. She chose your brother, Vincent managed to say between gasps. Just as her daughter will choose the truth about you, about what the Stone family really is. The difference, Damien tightened his grip, is that this time I'm choosing love over pride. Sirens began to sound in the distance. Mrs. Harrison, who had managed to reach the phone during the confusion, had already alerted the police. Vincent, realizing he was cornered, made his last desperate move. She knows you're her uncle, he laughed bitterly, knows that you desired your niece like an animal. What kind of monster does that make you? Damien. Aurora saw something break in Damien's eyes, not shame or guilt, but liberation. The kind of monster who learned to love, even when I thought I didn't deserve it. The sirens were closer now. Vincent tried to take advantage of the distraction to reach for the fallen gun, but Aurora was quicker. She kicked the gun away, ignoring the throbbing pain in her arm. It's over, she said, her voice carrying a strength she didn't know she possessed. The Stone Empire will no longer be built on blood and lies. Damien looked at her then, his dark eyes shining with a mixture of pride and something deeper, more dangerous. The moment between them was interrupted by the arrival of the police, who burst into the office with guns drawn. In the hours that followed, the truth finally began to emerge. Vincent confessed not only to Catherine's murder, but to a series of crimes committed in the name of preserving the Empire. Catherine's diary, combined with the documents she had hidden, and that Damien had protected in a digital copy all these years, provided the necessary evidence. But for Aurora, the greatest revelation wasn't in the documents or confessions. It was in the way Damien looked at her now, free from the weight of guilt and secrecy. In the hospital, while a doctor treated her superficial wound, he didn't leave her side for a second. Did you know? She finally asked when they were alone. About us being uncle and niece, Damien completed, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and emotion. I suspected from the beginning. That's why I fought so hard against what I felt for you. But now I know that some loves are stronger than blood or conventions. He moved closer, his fingers gently tracing the bandage on her arm. You're equal to your mother in courage, Aurora. But unlike her, you chose to stay and fight. Aurora felt her heart accelerate with his proximity. And you? What choice did you make? I chose you, Damien murmured, leaning in to capture her lips in a kiss that had nothing forbidden about it now. Only passion, promise, and a truth that could finally be lived in the light of day. The days following Vincent's arrest were a whirlwind of revelations and changes at Eaglecrest Manor. The mansion, previously suffocated by secrets, seemed to breathe new air, as if decades of lies were finally being purged from its ancient walls. Aurora observed the transformation of the property from her favorite position in the reconstituted library, where she spent hours organizing the documents that had survived the fire. The smell of smoke still lingered slightly in the air, mixing with the aroma of new books that Damien had ordered to replace the lost ones. I found more of your mother's letters, Mrs. Harrison announced, entering the library with an old box. They were hidden in a secret compartment in her room. Vincent never found them. Aurora took the letters with trembling hands. Catherine's elegant handwriting, so similar to her own, covered pages and pages of confessions and discoveries. One in particular caught her attention, dated just a week before her death. Dear Diary, the Stone Empire is not just a business empire. It's an empire of secrets. Each document I discover reveals a new layer of conspiracies, betrayals, corrupt power. Vincent is not just a loyal security guard. He's the guardian of these dark secrets, the silent executor who maintains appearances while the true power operates in the shadows. But there's something more, something I discovered today, that changes everything. The true origin of the stone fortune doesn't come just from dubious business. It comes from an agreement made generations ago with powerful families, a pact sealed with blood and maintained through arranged marriages and forced loyalties. Damien and James are just pieces in a larger game. My baby, my little Aurora, would also be part of this game if I allowed it. But I can't. I won't. Tomorrow, I will reveal everything I've discovered. May God forgive me, but it's the only way to break this cycle of power and destruction. Aurora let the letter fall, her hands trembling. She knew she would be killed. Your mother was stronger than anyone imagined. Damien's voice sounded from the library door. He entered, his walk still slightly unstable due to the residual effects of the poison. She chose to die to protect you from the destiny that the old patriarchs of the family had planned. What destiny? Damien approached, his eyes carrying an ancient sadness. An arranged marriage with the son of another powerful family, an alliance that would maintain the cycle of power and corruption. Vincent was more than a security guard. He was the representative of these ancient families, ensuring that their traditions were maintained through generations. That's why James changed his name, Aurora realized. He wasn't just running from the Stone Empire, he was trying to break the cycle. Yes, Damien nodded, sitting beside her, and when he and Catherine fell in love, they saw a chance to change everything. But I was blinded by power at the time, by tradition. I didn't realize that Vincent was manipulating everything, poisoning not just bodies but minds and hearts. Aurora studied the face of the man beside her, the man who had been her torment and her salvation, her nightmare and her deepest dream. And now, what happens to the Stone Empire? A soft smile curved Damien's lips. Now it will be rebuilt, not on blood and secrets, but on truth and redemption. His hand found hers, their fingers naturally intertwining. If you want to help me. His touch sent waves of heat through Aurora's body. Even after all the revelations, after all the dangers, her heart still accelerated in his presence. And us? What are we now? We are what we choose to be, Damien replied, his voice low and intense. The blood that runs in our veins is just a part of who we are. Our hearts. He brought her hand to his lips, softly kissing her fingers. Our hearts write their own story. Aurora felt her breath falter. People will talk, they'll say it's wrong. Let them talk, he murmured, pulling her closer. I've lived too long trapped by others' expectations, by the dead traditions of a family that lost itself in its own darkness. You brought me light, Aurora. You made me want to be a better man. The kiss that followed was different from all the others they had shared. There was no more guilt, no more secrets between them. It was a kiss of promise, of new beginning, of a love that had survived the darkest shadows. Mrs. Harrison found them like this, lost in each other, when she returned with more documents. The housekeeper smiled softly before silently withdrawing. She had served 3 generations of the Stone family, had seen the empire built on pain and betrayal. Now finally, she saw the chance for something new to be born from the ashes of the past. That night, as the new moon left the gardens of Eaglecrest Manor in complete darkness, Aurora and Damien walked hand in hand through the property. The scent of jasmine followed them, as if Catherine's spirit silently blessed this unlikely union. "Do you know what else your mother wrote in that last letter?" Damien asked, stopping near the fountain where they had shared so many tense moments. Aurora shook her head, hypnotized by the gleam in his eyes. "She wrote that true power isn't in control or tradition, but in the courage to choose love above all." He held her face between his hands, his eyes diving into hers. "It took me 20 years to understand what she meant, until you arrived." "And now," Aurora whispered, her entire body vibrating with his proximity. "Now," Damien smiled, "that rare smile she had learned to love. Now we choose to write our own story. No secrets, no ancient curses, no predetermined destinies. Just the two of us building something new from the ruins of the past." The kiss that sealed that promise was witnessed only by the night and the stars, while somewhere the ghosts of Eaglecrest Manor finally found their rest. A new chapter was beginning, not just for Aurora and Damien, but for the entire Stone Empire. And this time it would be a story of love, not power, of redemption, not revenge. A story that proved that even in the deepest shadows, the light of true love always finds a way to shine. News of the relationship between Aurora and Damien spread through high society like wildfire. The whispers in the corridors of Stone Enterprises, the looks of disapproval at charity galas, the gossip whispered in exclusive clubs, all of this formed a storm that threatened to engulf the couple who dared to defy conventions. Aurora was in the conference room at the headquarters of Stone Enterprises, watching Damien conduct his first assembly since the poisoning incident. He was different, not just physically recovered, but transformed from within. The cold, calculating man she had met at Eaglecrest Manor had given way to a more human leader, though no less powerful. "The changes I propose are not merely cosmetic," Damien declared, his voice filling the environment with natural authority. "The Stone Empire will be rebuilt on new foundations: transparency, social responsibility, ethical governance. These are not just buzzwords to please shareholders. They are the principles that will guide our transformation." Aurora noticed the glances exchanged between the older board members. One of them, Franklin Morgan, couldn't contain his indignation. "With all due respect, Damien," he stood up, his impeccable Italian suit unable to disguise the tension in his shoulders, "these changes seem precipitous, especially considering your current personal situation." The silence that followed was cutting. All eyes turned to Aurora, some with poorly disguised curiosity, others with open contempt. Damien, however, maintained his composure, a dangerous smile playing on his lips. "My personal situation, Franklin," he repeated softly, but there was steel in his voice. "Are you referring to the fact that I'm in love with my late brother's daughter? Or to the fact that for the first time in decades, a stone has chosen happiness over appearances?" "It's inappropriate," Franklin insisted, though his confidence seemed to falter under Damien's intense gaze. It was Aurora who stood up then, her presence immediately commanding attention. "Do you know what's inappropriate, Mr. Morgan? An empire built on blood and lies, a tradition of arranged marriages to maintain power, a history of violence disguised as business. That is what's inappropriate. She walked until she stood next to Damien, their hands meeting naturally. Vincent wasn't just a corrupt security guard. He was the symbol of everything that was rotten in this empire. And now that the truth has come to light, you have two choices: adapt to the new reality or leave. A murmur ran through the room. Aurora could feel the tension emanating from Damien, the way his fingers slightly tightened hers, not in warning, but in silent support. Stone Enterprises has always been synonymous with power, another board member argued. Our reputation, Damien interrupted him, will be rebuilt on truth, not appearances. And as for power, he looked at Aurora, his eyes softening momentarily. I've learned that true power lies in having the courage to change. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, each aspect of the transformation being intensely debated. At the end, it was clear that a new era was beginning for the Stone Empire. Some board members resigned, others swore loyalty to the new vision, but most importantly, change had begun. Later, in Damien's private office, Aurora found him contemplating the city through the panoramic windows. The sun was setting over the skyline, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that resembled fire and blood. You were incredible today, he said without turning, sensing her presence. Catherine would have been proud. Aurora approached, embracing him from behind, her face pressed against his broad back. Sometimes I feel her with me, you know, especially in the greenhouse, as if she were guiding my hands, showing me the secrets of the plants she loved so much. Damien turned in her arms, his hands framing her face with a delicacy that contrasted with his natural strength. You have her strength, the same determination to do what's right, no matter the cost. The difference, Aurora smiled, rising, on her tiptoes to be closer to his lips, is that this time we're not alone in the fight. The kiss that followed was deep, loaded with promise and passion. When they separated, Damien pressed his forehead against hers, his eyes closed in a rare display of vulnerability. Did you know I received 3 arranged marriage proposals this week? He murmured, a touch of humor in his voice. Apparently, some families still believe they can save me from you. Aurora laughed, though there was a note of tension in her voice. And are you tempted by any of them? The only temptation I feel, Damien replied, his voice lowering to a tone that made her body burn, is to spend the rest of my life proving that I chose the right love. His hands slid down her waist, pulling her closer. Eaglecrest Manor is different without the ghosts of the past, he continued. Lighter, more alive, as if it were waiting for something new to begin. Something like a family, Aurora suggested softly, her fingers playing with the buttons of his shirt. Damien's eyes darkened with desire and emotion. A family built on love, not obligation, on choice, not destiny. Does that mean you'll finally let me redecorate the East Wing? She teased, trying to lighten the intensity of the moment. It means, he replied, his voice hoarse as his lips traced a path down her neck, that you can do whatever you want with the mansion, with the empire, with my heart. The sun had completely set now, leaving the office in semi-darkness, but for the first time since she had arrived at Eaglecrest Manor, Aurora wasn't afraid of the darkness. Not when she had Damien by her side, not when their love illuminated even the darkest corners of their souls. Let's go home, she whispered against his lips. Home. Eaglecrest Manor was no longer a golden prison or a labyrinth of secrets. It was the place where their love had flourished among the ruins of the past, where a new story was being written, a story of redemption, of transformation, of a love strong enough to defy destiny and rewrite the rules of an empire. The transformation of Eaglecrest Manor happened gradually, like the awakening from a long winter. Aurora had taken on the task of renovating the mansion with the same determination she applied to the restructuring of Stone Enterprises. Each room was carefully rethought, each piece of furniture repositioned with purpose. The East Wing, previously closed and loaded with painful memories, was being transformed into a botanical research center, a tribute to her mother's passion. On that particular morning, Aurora was supervising the installation of new equipment in the laboratory when Mrs. Harrison hurriedly entered, her normally composed face marked by concern. "Miss Aurora, there's something you need to see," the housekeeper said, extending a tablet with the latest local news. The headline made her blood freeze. "Former Stone Enterprises board member found dead under suspicious circumstances." The name of Franklin Morgan, the same board member who had questioned her relationship with Damien at the board meeting, jumped from the screen like an accusation. "Where is Damien?" Aurora asked, her voice tense. "In his office, with the police," Mrs. Harrison replied softly. "They have questions about Mr. Morgan's dismissal and other things." Aurora practically ran through the corridors of the mansion, her heart pounding in her chest. She found Damien in his office, paler than normal but maintaining his characteristic composure as he answered the investigators' questions. "Mr. Stone," one of the detectives was saying, "we understand that Mr. Morgan had recently expressed concerns about changes in the company. Changes that you were implementing. Franklin was a man stuck in the past," Damien replied calmly, his eyes meeting Aurora's when she entered. "He chose to leave the company when it became clear that we no longer shared the same vision." "And did that vision include exposing certain ancient practices of the Stone family?" Aurora felt her body tense. The detective's words carried a dangerous insinuation. "If you're suggesting that I would have anything to do with Franklin's death," Damien said, his voice dangerously controlled, "I suggest you more carefully examine his latest financial transactions, particularly his contacts with certain families who didn't approve of our recent changes." The detective raised an eyebrow. "Are you making a formal accusation?" "I'm suggesting," Damien stood up, his presence dominating the environment, "that some people would prefer to see the Stone Empire remain in the shadows. Franklin was connected with these people, and now he's dead." After a few more questions, the investigators departed, leaving a heavy silence in the office. Aurora watched Damien walk to the window, his rigid posture revealing the tension he had hidden so well. "You knew this could happen," she said softly, not as an accusation, but as a statement. "I knew there would be resistance," he replied without turning. "But death? I thought those days had been left in the past." Aurora approached, her hands finding his tense shoulders. "What did Franklin discover?" Damien turned then, his dark eyes loaded with concern. "He was investigating old family connections, the kind of thing that Vincent used to keep buried. I think he found something he shouldn't have. Something related to my mother's death." A muscle pulsed in Damien's jaw. "Related to much more than that. Your mother discovered just the tip of the iceberg, Aurora. There are powerful families who built their fortunes alongside the Stones, through generations, of obscure agreements and loyalties bought with blood. And now these families are feeling threatened by our transparency," Aurora completed, the pieces fitting together in her mind. "Not just threatened," Damien pulled her into his arms, as if he needed to assure himself of her physical presence. "They're desperate. Franklin was probably just the first warning." Aurora felt a shiver run down her spine. "Will they come after us?" "Probably," he admitted, his arms tightening around her protectively. "But this time we're prepared. I'm no longer the same man who allowed them to take Catherine from me. And you—" He held her face between his hands, his eyes burning into hers. "You are stronger than all of them put together." The kiss that followed was intense, almost desperate, as if both needed to cling to the present before the past came back to haunt them. When they separated, Aurora saw a fierce determination in Damien's eyes. "What do we do now?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "We continue," he replied simply. "We continue exposing the truth, clearing the family name, transforming the empire into something your mother would be proud of. And if they want war—" A dangerous smile curved his lips. "Then we'll show them that the new Stones are even more formidable than the old ones." Aurora nodded, feeling an ancient strength awaken in her blood, the same strength that had led her mother to defy the system, that had given Damien the courage to choose love over power. "Together," she said, "not as a question but as a promise." "Always," Damien replied, his lips finding hers again. Outside the office, Mrs. Harrison smiled softly before moving away. She had served 3 generations of Stones, had seen the empire built on lies and fear. Now, finally, she saw something new being born. An empire built on love and truth, protected by 2 hearts that had found strength in each other. Franklin's death was just the beginning, she knew. More storms would come. But for the first time in decades, Mrs. Harrison didn't fear the future, because she had seen the power of true love, not the kind of love that hides in the shadows, but the kind that faces darkness head-on and transforms it into light. Autumn came to Eaglecrest Manor, bringing winds of change and danger. The golden leaves of the gardens danced to the whims of the breezes as Aurora walked through the restored greenhouse, now a living tribute to her mother's memory. Catherine's botanical experiments had been resumed under her supervision, each plant catalogued and studied with the same care her mother had dedicated 2 decades ago. It was among the rare orchids that Mrs. Harrison found her, carrying an old folder that made Aurora's heart skip a beat. "I found this in Vincent's old office," the housekeeper said, her voice trembling slightly. "They're reports about your mother, about her last days." Aurora took the folder with trembling hands. The documents inside were a macabre mixture of surveillance reports and analyses of the poison used on Catherine. But there was more, much more. "This isn't possible," she murmured, her eyes running over the pages. "Mrs. Harrison, this means that Vincent didn't act alone," Damien's voice completed from the greenhouse door. He entered, his presence filling the environment with a tense energy. "Franklin discovered the same thing before he died. There's an entire organization behind the Stone family crimes." Aurora felt her world spin. "The Society," she read from the report, "a group of ancient families united by blood and power." "And now they're coming after us," Damien approached, his eyes fixed on the documents. Franklin was just the beginning. "They want to preserve the secrets that have maintained their power for generations." "Why didn't they come before?" Aurora asked, her mind rapidly processing the implications. "Why wait so long?" "Because you changed everything," Mrs. Harrison replied softly. "Your arrival, your love for Damien, has created something they never expected. Hope. Hope for real change." Damien took the documents from Aurora's hands, placing them aside before holding her face between his hands. "They thought I would be like my father, like all the Stones. Before me. A guardian of ancient secrets maintaining the cycle of power and corruption." "But you chose another path," Aurora whispered, lost in the intensity of his gaze. "I chose you," he replied simply. "I chose the love that your mother so defended, and now—" A noise from outside the greenhouse interrupted him. Mrs. Harrison ran to check, returning with a grave expression. "They're here," the housekeeper announced. "The society has sent its representatives." Aurora felt Damien tense beside her. "How many?" "5 cars, important people. They're demanding an immediate audience." Damien let out a humorless laugh. "Of course they are. The Stone Empire is changing too quickly for their taste." Aurora held his hand, intertwining her fingers firmly with his. "We faced Vincent. We can face them too." "It's different," he warned, though his eyes shone with pride at her courage. "These people, they have real power. Power to destroy not just reputations, but entire lives." "Then we'd better make sure they understand that we're not alone in this fight," Aurora replied, an idea forming in her mind. "Mrs. Harrison, those documents we found in the safe after the fire." The housekeeper nodded, immediately understanding. "The digital files your mother created, all the evidence against each involved family." "Exactly," Aurora smiled, a smile that very much resembled Damien's in his most dangerous moments. "If they want war, let's show our weapons first." Damien watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "This is extremely risky, Aurora. These people are as vulnerable as we are," she interrupted him. "My mother died protecting this information. It's time to use it." The sound of approaching footsteps alerted them. Mrs. Harrison quickly gathered the scattered documents, while Damien and Aurora positioned themselves side by side, ready to face whatever came. The door opened, revealing 5 imposing figures. 3 men and 2 women, all dressed with the discreet elegance that only true power can buy. Aurora recognized some of them from the photos in her mother's files. Damien, one of the women, elegant in her grey suit, stepped forward. "I see. The rumors are true. You really have chosen to follow a different path." "Beatrice," Damien responded coldly, "to what do we owe the honor?" "You know very well why we're here," one of the men intervened, his voice loaded with authority. "The changes you're implementing are unacceptable." "Unacceptable to whom?" Aurora questioned, her voice clear and firm. "To the families who built their fortunes on innocent blood? To the guardians of secrets who killed my mother?" The visitors exchanged surprised looks, clearly not expecting such direct confrontation. "You are exactly like Catherine," Beatrice observed, a touch of something that could be admiration in her voice. "Equally courageous, equally foolish. And you," Aurora stepped forward, "are exactly as her files describe, the mastermind behind decades of manipulation and death." A heavy silence fell over the greenhouse. The air seemed charged with electricity as 2 worlds collided. The old power facing a new order that refused to bow. "Be careful, girl," Beatrice warned softly. "You don't know what forces you're playing with." "No," Aurora smiled, the same dangerous smile she had inherited from her mother. "You're the ones who don't know. Because while you were busy trying to keep your secrets buried, we were preparing to expose them." Damien stepped forward, placing himself beside her. "The choice is yours," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of generations of stone power. "You can adapt to the changes we're implementing, or you can face the consequences of decades of crimes exposed to the public." "You wouldn't do that," one of the men growled. "You would destroy your own family too." "The Stone family is already being destroyed and rebuilt," Aurora replied. "The difference is that we're choosing how it happens. You can be part of the change or part of the ruins." The sun was beginning to set, casting dramatic shadows through the greenhouse glass. Aurora could feel the heat of Damien's presence beside her, his strength merging with hers in a kind of power that the society had never encountered before, the power of true love combined with relentless justice. The battle was just beginning, she knew. But for the first time since she had arrived at Eaglecrest Manor, Aurora didn't fear the future, because now she understood what her mother had discovered so long ago. True power doesn't come from secrets or traditions, but from the courage to face the truth and fight for something greater than oneself. The night after the confrontation with the society, Eaglecrest Manor vibrated with a different energy. Aurora and Damien were in his office, surrounded by documents and digital files. Catherine's latest discoveries, now their most powerful weapon against those who had orchestrated her death. "Your mother was brilliant," Damien murmured, his eyes scanning a series of coded notes. "She not only gathered evidence against them, she created an entire network of informants within the most powerful families." Aurora approached, observing over his shoulder. "And kept everything hidden for so long. How did they never discover it?" "Because she used their own system against them," he replied, a touch of admiration in his voice. "Each family in the society has its own codes, its own forms of secret communication. Catherine learned all of them. And now we have access to everything," Aurora completed, feeling a shiver of anticipation run down her spine. "But why did Beatrice seem so calm? She must know how much we're armed against them." Damien stood up, pulling her into his arms with an urgency that took her by surprise. "Because they have something planned. Beatrice never backs down without having an ace up her sleeve." As if to confirm his words, Aurora's cell phone vibrated with a message. It was a photo, old, yellowed by time. It showed her mother, much younger, in a laboratory that she recognized as the greenhouse of Eaglecrest Manor. But she wasn't alone. Beside her was Beatrice, both smiling at the camera. "They knew each other," Aurora whispered, feeling her world spin. "They were friends?" "More than that," Mrs. Harrison's voice sounded from the office door. The housekeeper entered, carrying an old box that made Damien pale. "They were sisters." The silence that followed was deafening. Aurora felt her legs weaken, and if not for Damien's firm support, she would have fallen. "How?" she began, her voice failing. Beatrice Stone, Mrs. Harrison explained gently, placing the box on the desk. Catherine's older sister who abandoned the family name when she assumed her place in the society. Your Aunt Aurora. Damien let out a low curse, his hands protectively tightening around Aurora's waist. That's why she always seemed so personally involved in everything. Aurora gently extricated herself from his arms, approaching the box with trembling steps. Inside, she found more photos, letters, documents, an entire past that had been carefully hidden from her. My mother never mentioned a sister in her diary, she said, her voice loaded with confusion and pain. Because Beatrice was already dead to her, Mrs. Harrison replied, her ancient eyes full of painful memories. Dead since the day she chose power over blood, since she swore loyalty to the society above any family ties. And now she wants to do the same with me, Aurora realized, the pieces fitting together in her mind. She wants me to assume the place my mother refused. Not just that, Damien intervened, his voice tense. She wants to use you to legitimize their power. A stone by double blood, both from your father's side and your mother's, the perfect symbol of union between the ancient families. Aurora felt nausea rise in her throat. Had all the love she had found at Eagle Crest Manor, all the truth she had discovered about herself, was it all part of a larger plan? No, she said firmly, surprising everyone with the strength in her voice. I won't be a piece in their game. I won't betray everything my mother died protecting. Damien watched her with an intensity that made her heart race. Even if it means facing your own family. You are my family, she replied without hesitation, crossing the distance between them with determined steps. You, Mrs. Harrison, my mother's memory, that's family, not blood ties used as chains. The kiss he gave her then was different from all the others. It was a declaration of war and a promise of eternal love, all at the same time. When they separated, both breathless, Mrs. Harrison discreetly cleared her throat. There's one more thing you need to know, the housekeeper said, removing a final envelope from the box. Catherine left specific instructions for if this happened, a plan to destroy the society from the inside out. Aurora took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, she found a letter written in her mother's elegant handwriting. My dear daughter, if you're reading this, it means Beatrice has finally revealed the truth about our relationship. It also means that you have found at Eagle Crest Manor the same love I found. A love strong enough to defy traditions and break ancient curses. The society's power isn't in its money or its secrets. It's in fear. In the fear that keeps people trapped in roles they didn't choose, in destinies they don't desire. But you, my Aurora, were born to be light, to show that there is a different path. The documents I left are only part of the plan. The other part is in you, in your courage to choose love over power, truth over tradition. Beatrice may be my sister by blood, but she forgot the most important lesson our mother taught us. A woman's true power lies in her capacity to love without fear. Use this against them, my daughter. Use the love you found with Damien. Use the strength that has always existed inside you. Show the society that their days of controlling destinies through fear are over. With all my love, Catherine. Aurora raised her eyes from the letter to find Damien and Mrs. Harrison watching her expectantly. In her chest, her heart beat with a certainty that went beyond fear or doubt. My mother is right, she declared, her voice firm. We'll show them a different kind of power, the power of true love. Damien pulled her into his arms again, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and fierce determination. Together, he promised, his lips gently brushing against hers. Together, she agreed, feeling in her heart that the true battle was just beginning. Outside, night had fallen over Eagle Crest Manor, but for the first time since this story began, the shadows didn't seem so frightening, because now Aurora knew the strongest light doesn't come from power or tradition, but from the love we choose to defend, no matter the cost. Morning brought with it a renewed determination to Eagle Crest Manor. Aurora was in the greenhouse organizing the latest documents found when she felt Damien's familiar presence behind her. His arms enveloped her, and she allowed herself a moment of peace before facing what was to come. "Beatrice has requested a meeting," he murmured against her neck. "Tonight, at the old stone house downtown." Aurora turned in his arms, studying his tense face. "It's a trap." "Probably," he agreed, his fingers gently tracing the line of her face. "But it's also our best chance to end this once and for all." "How?" A dangerous smile curved Damien's lips. "Because while they expect us to bring documents and evidence, we'll bring something much more powerful. The truth about what really happened the night your mother died." Aurora felt her heart skip a beat. "You know what happened?" "Now I do." He gently released her, walking to one of the greenhouse tables where several files were spread out. "Mrs. Harrison found this morning, Vincent's real diary, not the official reports he kept for the society." With trembling hands, Aurora took the small black-covered notebook. The pages were yellowed and the ink slightly smudged, but the words were still perfectly legible. "June 3rd, 1999. Beatrice gave the final order today. Catherine discovered too much, threatens to expose everything. But it's not just about the society's business, it's personal. The truth about the child Catherine carries could destroy decades of careful planning. The plan is simple. The poison has been in her system for weeks. Tonight, during dinner at Eaglecrest Manor, the final dose will be administered. It appears natural at this point. Memory lapses. Dizziness, confusion, no one will suspect murder. But Catherine is too smart. She's already noticed what's happening. I saw her hiding documents in the greenhouse this afternoon, whispering with James about escape plans. I can't allow it. What Beatrice doesn't know is that I also received orders from another member of the society, orders that contradict hers. There's more at stake here than just family secrets. The child Catherine carries, there are ancient prophecies about a union that could either save or destroy the society's power. Tonight, everything will change." Aurora let the diary fall, her hands violently trembling. "Prophecies? What kind of—" "The kind that kept the society in power for generations," Mrs. Harrison answered from the greenhouse door. The housekeeper entered, carrying an ancient book that Aurora had never seen. Each important family has its own set of predictions, passed down through generations. The most important speaks of a child born from true love between two powerful lineages who would have the power to break the ancient curses or strengthen them. "Me?" Aurora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You?" Damien confirmed, his dark eyes fixed on her with intensity. "Daughter of James Stone and Catherine, raised far from power and corruption, returning to find a love that defies all the society's rules. That's why Beatrice wants so badly to control me," Aurora realized, the pieces fitting together. "It's not just about power or tradition, it's about an ancient prophecy. A prophecy that's being fulfilled exactly as your mother planned." Mrs. Harrison smiled softly. "Catherine knew even before she died that you would find your way back to Eaglecrest Manor, that you would find Damien, that together you would have the power to change everything." Aurora approached Damien, her hand naturally finding his. "And tonight?" "Tonight," he pulled her closer, his eyes shining with a mixture of love and fierce determination, "we show them that some prophecies are fulfilled in ways that no one expects." The plan was elaborated in the following hours, each detail carefully considered. When night came, Aurora was ready, not just with documents and evidence, but with an inner strength that came from generations of women who dared to defy destiny. The old stone house was an imposing building in the historic heart of the city, its stone walls guarding centuries of secrets and power. Aurora felt a shiver run down her spine when she and Damien crossed the iron gates. "Remember," he whispered, his hand firm at the small of her back, "no matter what happens in there, our love is stronger than any prophecy or curse." Aurora pulled him in for a quick but intense kiss, her lips sealing a silent promise. When they separated, she saw in his eyes the same fire that burned in her own heart, the fire of true love, more powerful than all the society's manipulations. Beatrice awaited them in the great hall, surrounded by other important members of the society. Her smile was the same one Aurora had seen in the old photo with her mother, beautiful and deadly like a poisonous rose. "Welcome," she said, her soft voice hiding steel. Finally, the family is reunited. Aurora stepped forward, feeling the strength of generations of stone women running in her veins. Yes, Aunt Beatrice, it's time we resolve this as a family. Beatrice's smile faltered for a moment, and Aurora knew the true battle was about to begin. A battle not just for power or revenge, but for the right to choose her own destiny, to love freely, to transform ancient curses into new blessings. And this time, she wouldn't fight alone. She had Damien by her side, their love stronger than any prophecy. She had her mother's memory guiding her steps, and most importantly, she had the certainty that some love stories are powerful enough to rewrite the destiny of entire generations. The great hall of the stone house was illuminated by dozens of ancient candles, creating dancing shadows on the walls covered with dark wood. Aurora could feel the weight of generations of power and secrets in the air, but remained firm, her hand intertwined with Damien's, conveying strength and determination. Beatrice led them to a large oval table where other members of the society were already seated. Aurora recognized some faces from the photos in her mother's files, each representing one of the ancient families that had built their empires on blood and lies. "Before we begin," Beatrice said, occupying the head of the table, "there's something you need to see." With an elegant gesture, she signaled to one of the servants, who brought an antique projector. On the opposite wall, images began to appear, photos and videos that Aurora had never seen before. Her mother, much younger, smiling beside Beatrice at different moments. The two sisters sharing secrets, laughter, dreams. Then came the more recent images. Catherine pregnant, her radiant face as she caressed the belly where Aurora was growing. "Your mother was more than my sister," Beatrice spoke, her voice carrying an emotion that Aurora had never heard before. "She was my other half. We grew up knowing the power of our lineage, of the prophecies that guided our destiny. But Catherine, she always wanted more than that. She wanted freedom," Aurora completed softly. "Freedom to love, to choose her own path. And that choice killed her." One of the men at the table intervened harshly. "Just as your choices may destroy everything we've built." Damien stepped forward, his presence dominating the environment. "Or they may transform everything into something better, something built on truth and love, not fear and manipulation." Beatrice rose slowly, her eyes so similar to Catherine's fixed on Aurora. "You think you understand the power that runs in your veins, child? You think that a few weeks at Eaglecrest Manor are enough to comprehend the weight of generations of destiny?" "No," Aurora replied, her voice firm. "But I understand the power of true love, the same love that gave my mother courage to defy you, the same love that brought me back to Eaglecrest Manor, the same love that makes me choose Damien, even knowing all the dark secrets of our family." A murmur ran through the table. Aurora released Damien's hand and walked until she was face to face with her aunt. "You loved my mother," she continued, seeing the pain in Beatrice's eyes. "But you chose power over that love. You chose tradition over family. And now you want me to make the same choice?" "I want you to understand your place in this story," Beatrice replied, her voice trembling slightly. "The prophecy speaks of a child born from true love between two powerful lineages. You are that child, Aurora. Your power comes not just from stone blood, but from the pure love your parents shared." "And what does this prophecy say exactly?" Damien questioned, approaching Aurora protectively. It was another member of the society who answered, an elderly lady whose eyes seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "It says that this child will have the power to unite or destroy, to strengthen the ancient alliances or break them forever, and that her heart will be the key. The love she chooses will determine the destiny of all the ancient families." Aurora felt something awaken inside her, a deep understanding that went beyond prophecies or destiny. "That's why Vincent had conflicting orders that night. Some of you wanted my mother dead to prevent my birth. Others wanted to ensure that I was born so they could control me. And now," Beatrice completed softly, "you're here, in love with the man who should be your protector, not your lover. Repeating the same pattern as your mother, choosing love over duty, No, Aurora corrected her, a soft smile curving her lips. I'm choosing both, because true power isn't in blindly following ancient traditions, but in transforming them into something new, something better. She turned to face everyone at the table. You built your empires through fear and control, but Damien and I are showing that there is another way. Stone Enterprises is stronger than ever, not because we keep secrets, but because we choose transparency, not because we force loyalty, but because we inspire it. Damien approached, his arms encircling her waist from behind. The prophecy is being fulfilled, he declared, his voice carrying the weight of his own ancient lineage. But not in the way you expected. Aurora didn't come to strengthen the old alliances through manipulation and fear. She came to transform them through love and truth. A deep silence fell over the hall. Aurora could feel the tension in the air, the power of centuries of tradition fighting against the force of a new era that was announcing itself. Beatrice was the first to move. With tears in her eyes, she approached Aurora, her hands trembling. When she touched her niece's face, "You're so much like her," she whispered. "Not just in your face, but in your soul. Catherine would be proud." "Then help me honor her memory," Aurora asked softly. "Help me transform the legacy of the ancient families into something she would be proud to see." The moment that followed seemed suspended in time, aunt and niece facing each other, the past and future meeting at a point of transformation. When Beatrice finally nodded, Aurora felt as if something ancient and powerful had been broken and reconstituted. "The prophecy spoke of union or destruction," the elderly lady commented, a knowing smile on her lips. "But perhaps the true prophecy is about transformation, about finding a balance between honoring the past and creating a better future." Aurora turned in Damien's arms, finding in his eyes the same love that had given her parents the strength to defy traditions, the same love that now gave them the power to transform them. "Together," she whispered against his lips. "Always," he replied, sealing the promise with a kiss that made the candles flicker and the shadows retreat, a kiss that marked not just the union of two hearts, but the beginning of a new era for all the ancient families. The weeks following the meeting at the stone house were a whirlwind of changes. Eagle Crest Manor, once a fortress of secrets, now pulsed with new life. Aurora had transformed the old East Wing into a botanical research center, continuing her mother's work, but with a renewed purpose, using plant knowledge not for power or control, but for healing and transformation. On a particularly significant afternoon, she was in the greenhouse with Beatrice, showing the advances in research when her aunt made a revelation that would change everything once more. "Your mother developed an antidote," Beatrice said softly, her fingers caressing the petals of a rare orchid, "for the poison that killed her. She knew she was being poisoned, but instead of running away, she decided to use her own body as a final experiment." Aurora felt her heart tighten. "Why?" "Because she knew she wouldn't be the last," Beatrice replied, her eyes meeting her niece's. "Black belladonna was the society's favorite weapon for generations. Catherine wanted to ensure that no one else would die that way." "And the antidote?" "It's here." Beatrice removed a small crystal vial from her purse. "Damien didn't naturally develop immunity to the poison as we thought. He survived because I had been secretly administering the antidote, following the instructions Catherine left." Aurora took the vial with trembling hands. You were protecting us all this time?" A sad smile curved Beatrice's lips. "Your mother made me promise on her last night that when you returned to Eagle Crest Manor, I would ensure that history didn't repeat itself, that true love would have a chance this time." Before Aurora could respond, Damien appeared at the greenhouse door. There was an urgency in his steps that made her heart race. "We need to go to the hospital," he said without preamble. "Mrs. Harrison, she collapsed." The journey to the hospital was a blur of worry and fear. Mrs. Harrison had been more than a housekeeper. She had been a guardian of secrets, a protector of forbidden loves, a constant amid so many changes. In the hospital room they found The woman who had served 3 generations of stones connected to various monitors. Her face was pale, but her eyes still shone with the same strength as always. "Poison," she whispered when Aurora held her hand. "Someone in the mansion." Still, loyal to the old order, Aurora exchanged a quick look with Beatrice before taking the crystal vial from her purse. "My mother's antidote," she said, her voice trembling. "Is there still time?" It was Damien who took the vial from her trembling hands, his years of experience with poisons and antidotes guiding his movements as he administered the precise dose. To Mrs. Harrison's avis. The hours that followed were a tense vigil. Aurora didn't leave the bedside, her hands intertwined with Mrs. Harrison's, while Damien and Beatrice worked together to discover who had poisoned the housekeeper. It was near dawn when Mrs. Harrison opened her eyes, her color gradually returning. "The new gardener," she murmured. "I caught him going through the old files, trying to destroy the last evidence against some families." Damien was already on the phone, mobilizing his security team. Aurora felt a wave of gratitude and love for him, for the way he had changed, how he now used his power to protect, not to control. "It's over," Beatrice announced hours later, entering the hospital room. The man confessed. He was an agent of one of the ancient families that still resisted the changes. But now, a satisfied smile curved her lips. Now they have no choice but to accept the new order. Aurora felt Damien approach from behind, his strong arms encircling her waist. "And what exactly is the new order?" he asked, his voice hoarse near her ear. It was Mrs. Harrison who answered, her voice weak but determined. "Love over power, truth over tradition. The prophecy has been fulfilled, but not as they expected." "The prophecy," Aurora murmured, turning in Damien's arms to face him. "It spoke about union or destruction, but perhaps the true power is in transforming destruction into renewal." Damien's eyes shone with understanding and love. "Like we transformed Eaglecrest Manor from a prison of secrets into a home of true love." "Exactly," she smiled, rising to brush her lips against his. "Like we transformed an empire built on fear into a legacy of hope." The kiss that followed was witnessed by Mrs. Harrison and Beatrice, 2 women who had seen the worst and best of the Stone family, who now witnessed the birth of something entirely new. "Your mother was right," Beatrice said softly, "when she said you would be the light that would change everything, not just through the power of your blood or the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, but through the strength of your heart." Aurora nestled closer in Damien's arms, feeling the strength and love that emanated from him. "And now?" "Now," he replied, his eyes shining with a mixture of love and determination, "we continue building something new, something that honors your mother's sacrifice, that heals the wounds of the past, that shows the world that true power doesn't come from control or tradition, but from love," she completed, her heart overflowing, "from choosing love every day, no matter the cost." Miss Harrison smiled from the hospital bed, her colors gradually returning thanks to Catherine's antidote. "And that," she declared with the wisdom of one who had witnessed decades of Stone family history, "is the greatest magic of all." Outside, the sun rose over the city, painting the sky in shades of hope. At Eaglecrest Manor, the gardens flourished. With new life, Catherine's plants thriving under her daughter's care. And in the hearts of Aurora and Damien, a love that had survived poisons and prophecies continued to grow, proving that some love stories are powerful enough to change not just destinies, but entire generations. A year had passed since that fateful night at the Stone House. Eaglecrest Manor, once a somber fortress of ancient secrets, now shone under the early summer sun. The gardens were in full bloom, Catherine's rare orchids multiplying under Aurora's dedicated care, as if nature itself celebrated the transformation that had occurred. Aurora was in the greenhouse, finishing cataloguing a new species of medicinal plant, when she felt Damien's strong arms encircle her waist from behind. She smiled, leaning back against his broad chest, letting his scent, a mixture of his expensive cologne with something uniquely masculine, envelop her senses. "Are you ready yet?" he murmured against her neck, his lips brushing the sensitive skin there. "Almost," she replied, turning in his arms to face him. "I still can't believe we did it, that we really transformed everything." And it was true. The Stone Empire had been completely restructured. The old alliances based on fear and manipulation had given way to transparent and ethical partnerships. The society, under the joint leadership of Beatrice and Aurora, had transformed into a foundation dedicated to preserving the ancestral knowledge of the families, but using it for the common good. "Your mother would be proud," Damien said, his dark eyes shining with love and admiration, "not just of the transformation of the Empire, but of you, of the amazing woman you've become." Aurora felt tears form in her eyes. "Sometimes I feel her here, you know, especially in the greenhouse, as if she were guiding my hands, showing me the secrets of the plants she loved so much." "She is." A soft voice sounded from the door. Mrs. Harrison entered, leaning on a cane, a sequel to the poisoning that had almost killed her, but her eyes shone with the same strength as always. "Catherine lives through you, through the love you and Damien share, through the changes you've made." Beatrice appeared right behind her, carrying an old box that made Aurora's heart leap. "We found this today, hidden in a secret compartment in the old house. These are your mother's last notes, written on the night when on the last night." With trembling hands, Aurora opened the box. Inside, she found a diary different from the others. This one was personal, intimate, full of hopes and dreams. For the future she wouldn't live to see. "My dear Aurora, if you're reading this, it means everything happened as I foresaw. You found your way back to Eaglecrest Manor, found true love with Damien, yes, I always knew it would be him, and transformed the Stone Empire into something I can finally be proud to leave as your legacy." The prophecy that so frightened this society was never about destruction or power. It was about love. The power to choose love over tradition, to transform ancient curses into new blessings, to heal wounds that crossed generations. You, my daughter, are living proof that some love stories are powerful enough to change the world. Your father and I chose love, even knowing the price we would pay. Damien chose love, even when he thought he didn't deserve it. And you chose love every day, transforming each moment of darkness into light. The antidote I created wasn't just for the black belladonna poison. It was a symbol that there is always hope, always a chance for healing, no matter how deep the poison in our veins or in our souls. Take good care of Eaglecrest Manor. Take good care of Damien's heart. He may seem strong and invulnerable, but he carries ancient scars that only true love can heal. And above all, take care of your own heart. Keep it open, even when the world seems too dark. With all my eternal love, Mom. Aurora raised her eyes from the diary to find not only Damien, but Mrs. Harrison and Beatrice silently crying. The afternoon sun entered through the greenhouse windows, making the tears on their faces shine like diamonds. She knew, Beatrice whispered, her voice choked, knew everything that would happen. No, Aurora smiled through her own tears. She had faith, faith in the power of true love, faith that choosing love is always worth it, no matter the price. Damien pulled her into his arms then, his lips, finding hers in a kiss that carried all the weight of their shared history and all the promise of their future together. "Marry me," he murmured against her lips when they separated. "Not because an ancient prophecy says we should, not because it's what the society expects, but because I choose you. I choose our love every day for all eternity." Aurora felt her heart overflow with happiness. "Yes," she answered simply, "because some truths are too powerful to need many words." The sun was setting over Eaglecrest Manor, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. In the garden, Catherine's flowers swayed gently in the afternoon breeze, as if blessing the union to come. And in the heart of the mansion that had been the stage for so many tragedies and triumphs, a new chapter began to be written. A chapter no longer about power or prophecies, but about the rarest and most precious kind of magic, the transformative power of true love. A love strong enough to heal ancient wounds, to transform curses into blessings, to prove that some stories are destined not to end, but to flourish eternally, like Catherine's rare orchids, beautiful and resilient, finding light even in the most unlikely places.